Some nights are harder than others. You lie down. And instead of rest, the mind begins turning things over, replaying, wondering, why is this happening? Why does it keep hurting? Why is it so hard? If any part of that feels familiar, this is for you. Tonight we are going to sit with a very unfashionable idea, not the idea that suffering is good. Not that you should enjoy pain, or pretend it isn't there. But something more honest than that, the idea that suffering is not a mistake. My name is not important, what matters is that for the next 15 minutes or so, you have nowhere to be, nothing to fix, and nothing to prove. You only have to listen. And if sleep comes before the end, let it. Part 1, The Philosopher Who Told the Truth. Most philosophies of the ancient and modern world were built around a central promise: if you live well enough, if you think correctly, if you follow the right path, you can reduce your suffering, perhaps eliminate it entirely. Arthur Schopenhauer looked at this promise, and said, quietly but firmly, I don't think that's true. Born in 1788, Schopenhauer was one of the most honest minds in the history of philosophy. Not brutal, honest. He looked at the world as it actually was, not as philosophers hoped it would be. And what he saw was this: living things suffer, not because they are doing it wrong, but because suffering is built into the structure of existence. He called the force behind this the will. A blind, relentless, purposeless drive that runs through all of nature, through the tree pushing toward light, through the animal searching for food, through the human being lying awake at 3 in the morning, trying to figure out why nothing is ever quite enough. The will is not cruel. It is not kind. It simply is. And it wants, endlessly. Even when what it wants is only to stop wanting. Part 2, The Anatomy of Pain. Schopenhauer identified several layers of human suffering, and what is striking, even now, is how accurately he named them. The first layer is simple physical discomfort. Hunger, illness, cold, exhaustion. The kind of suffering the body speaks directly and clearly. The second layer is more complex. It is the suffering of wanting something and not having it, the gap between where you are and where you think you should be. This is the layer most of us live in, most of the time, and the third layer, the one he found most interesting, is the suffering that comes after we get what we want. The strange hollowness of achievement. The satisfaction that was supposed to arrive, and somehow, didn't quite. You reach the goal. You cross the finish line. You get the relationship, the job, the recognition. And for a moment, relief. And then, slowly, the hunger begins again. Schopenhauer didn't say this to be cruel, he said it because he thought it was important to see clearly. Because here is the thing about that third layer of suffering. It means that suffering is not a problem to be solved. It is a feature of the system.
Part 3, What this actually means for you. Now, I want to be careful here, because there is a version of this philosophy that sounds like, nothing you do matters, giving up is wisdom. Don't bother trying. That is not what Schopenhauer meant. What he meant was something more like this. When you understand that suffering is structural, that it is not a sign of your failure, not a punishment, not a mistake you made, something changes. The suffering doesn't disappear, but the second layer of suffering, the suffering about the suffering, becomes less automatic. You stop asking, why is this happening to me? And you begin to ask, with a kind of curious steadiness, what is this? And what can I learn from being in it? This is a profound shift. It is the difference between fighting a rainstorm and learning to walk in the rain. The rain still falls. You still get wet. But the war against the rain, that exhausting, pointless, futile war, quietly ends. Part 4, compassion as the answer. Here is the part of Schopenhauer's philosophy that surprises most people. Given that he believed life was fundamentally painful, given that he saw desire as the engine of suffering, you might expect his conclusion to be cold. Withdrawn. Every person for themselves. It was the opposite. Because if every living thing is driven by the same blind will, if every person around you is struggling with the same fundamental ache, then cruelty becomes not just wrong, but deeply irrational. To hurt someone who is already hurting is to fail to see what is right in front of you. We are all in the same condition. Schopenhauer wrote that the basis of morality is not law, not reason, not social contract, but compassion. The simple, direct recognition that when you look into another person's eyes, you are looking at someone who knows pain the same way you do. This is, he said, the one thing that can briefly quiet the will. Not fighting it, not denying it, but recognizing it, in yourself, and in every living thing around you. Part 5. The Uses of Darkness. There is something valuable about the dark hours of the night. Not because darkness is good in itself, but because in the dark, the performances of the day fall away. You can't see your reflection. You can't check how you appear. The audience, real and imagined, cannot see you either. It's just you. And whatever is actually true about how you feel. Schopenhauer believed that honest self-knowledge, the willingness to look at your own inner life without flinching, was the beginning of something important. Not because it would fix everything, but because self-deception is one of the main ways the will keeps us running in circles. We pretend we don't want things we desperately want. We pretend we aren't hurt by things that hurt us. We pretend we are fine when we are very much not fine. And all of that pretending costs something. Here in the dark, if you have been carrying something difficult, you are allowed to simply acknowledge it. You don't have to solve it tonight. You don't have to be brave about it. You don't have to turn it into a lesson or a growth experience. You just have to let it be true. That is enough. Part 6. The Gift of Limitations. Late in his life, Schopenhauer wrote something that I find quietly extraordinary. He said that a person who truly understands the nature of existence, who sees clearly that suffering is structural, that desire is endless, that the will cannot be satisfied, does not necessarily become miserable. They become free. Free from the tyranny of endless striving. Free from the belief that happiness is always just one more achievement away. Free to find something real and present, a piece of music, a walk in the morning air, a moment of genuine connection, the simple fact of being alive and breathing, and receive it as the gift it actually is, not because the suffering is gone, but because they are no longer waiting for it to be gone before they start living. Part 7. Closing. Whatever brought you to this particular night, whatever you are carrying, whatever you are working through, I want you to hear this. The fact that it hurts does not mean you have failed. The fact that you are still in the middle of it does not mean it won't shift. The fact that you are lying here in the dark means you are still here, still breathing, still, on some fundamental level, going forward. Schopenhauer spent a lifetime inside the darkest truths he could find, and what he kept returning to was not despair. It was honesty, compassion, and the quiet, enduring beauty of a single moment received without grasping. Let your body be heavy now. Let your thoughts slow. Let the night do what nights are for. You don't have to carry it right now. It will still be there in the morning if you need to pick it back up. But for now, rest. Sleep well.